You guys still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right on. I'm on a different screen, so I can't see you right now. Cool.
I just got a notice on YouTube. Watch Flatlander Fridays.
Did it show up?
Yeah, it just popped up on the screen.
That's good. Then we should be live then. Sweet. Well, I'm gonna hit the music and we're gonna get rolling here and hopefully everything is good on the YouTube side. Let me know, Eric, if something's not working. I'm gonna do a
Yeah,
little
let me check
intro
my
here.
phone. I'll check it.
Right
Go ahead.
on. I've got all kind of stuff. Oh, there it is. Sweet. Let me know. We are live. Okay. We get this party started on the podcast side of it. Thank you everybody for tuning in. This is live, so you guys bear with us. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth here. So everybody on YouTube, welcome. And yeah, let's get this freaking thing started.
Habari zetu akwete mayanda ameyasanza tina asambazi kwata mitasi kwatapema ukuwa maukwa isho.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to In the Bush podcast. We are here with a couple of bad A elk hunters. I'm excited to do this, y'all. Eric and Ben, welcome. We're going to be chatting about doing some hunting, and we're going to dive into specifically hunting elk for any and everybody that is that's watching or listening to this. If you haven't come to the podcast, we welcome you. Go to In the Bush, anywhere that you listen to your podcast, you can find it there. And if you're watching on YouTube and you're not subscribed, make sure that you guys do subscribe. We welcome you, and thanks for being here, everybody. Eric, how has your
What's
day
up, my brother?
been traveling, brother?
It's been good, man. Got home safely, so happy to jump on this podcast and talk about my favorite thing in the world, elk hunting. So,
Yeah,
yeah, man.
yeah,
Hope you
man.
guys are well.
Ben, how do you feel being live on YouTube and on the podcast?
Feel like I'm sitting at the feet of giants right now. So just happy to be here with y'all.
Hey,
Oh
Ben
no.
hasn't seen me yet. I'm only 5'6", bro. Ain't
Yeah.
no foot of giants.
Eric
At least stand
actually
next to Cole is.
Eric actually rides around in my backpack whenever we're out elk
That's
hunting.
right.
And then whenever I need him, I just deploy him and then we go start attacking elk. Uh
That's right. That's right.
that's the way we work. Um Well, y'all, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. I know it's kind of short notice, but yeah, so us three, we're going to be going. So Eric and I are going to start off the season. I have a tag in New Mexico, and I can't believe this guy's going to follow me around again for another 14 days of
That's
pure
right.
suck in New Mexico. Last year, we didn't necessarily get our asses handed to us, but we did. You know, I passed up a few elk and I really wanted to shoot a mature bull. That was my goal. I didn't want to shoot a raghorn. So, there were some opportunities there that I let go. And I don't regret it one bit because I drew the tag again.
Yeah, you
So
lucky dog, you.
I can't, I really can't believe that I drew the tag. But anyways, I'm the reason for this podcast and the reason for us doing this live is because we want to have some interactions from some people. And the cool thing is we have all ends of the spectrum right here. We have Ben, Ben, tell us a little bit about your hunting journey and maybe where you are today, and yeah, just kind of give a little introduction maybe.
Yeah, so I'll keep it to elk because I think it'd be too long for all hunting stories. But this will be my second season actually going elk hunting. Last year we had a 10-day hike or somewhere around there, and about 2 days in, the guy that I was traveling with had some stomach problems, so we had to come off the mountain early, empty-handed. And so ever since then, it's been me itching to get back out there and try my hand at it again. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. Still a novice, but yeah, just again, super happy to be here.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about, so whenever you actually, when you guys made it to Colorado, I know you were only there for 2 days in the backcountry, but you did have a little bit of success, and success meaning different things for different people, right? Like maybe talk to that, because that was your first time that you had ever been or set foot in the mountains, or at least, you know, going after elk anyway. And what did that look like for you? You know, because me and you, and your partner, we spent some time together and we did some coaching and stuff like that. So I'm curious, if did you just hit the ground running, or what was that like whenever you guys landed out there and you started for your 2 days?
Yeah, so we showed up. I felt relatively like physically prepared. So that wasn't really a problem. Where we were hunting was in North Colorado or Northeast Colorado. And the track that we had decided to hunt based off Cole's recommendations was about a 6.5 mile hike in. And I think it was, you know, 3,000 feet of elevation climb, but the first 2,000 in the first mile. So, you know, getting that exposure to understanding what, as Cole put it, embracing the suck really is like when you're carrying 80 pounds of weight on your back out in the backcountry was a big wake up call. You know, even though it was 2 days, there was like a lot of things that I took away from that just in the short time. The first is I did not heed Cole's warning, and I definitely overpacked. So I think I could have cut about 20 pounds out of my bag. So that would have been good to know ahead of time. We did run into elk. I mean, when we were on the way up there, we spooked like a herd of probably 10 cows, you know, just running across the path that we saw. It was
And
early
you
in the
guys,
rut. Oh, go
and
ahead.
you guys were y'all there? Was it early season, the first of the season, or when? What did that look like, your time frame?
Yeah, sorry. We were at the very beginning of bow season. So we showed up on opening day. And, you know, the lessons that I did learn, and I would say they're actually successes as well, as and Cole again had warned us to be good on our calls. And, you know, being early in the season like that, there weren't a whole lot of bugling. There wasn't a whole lot of bugling going on. And so where I felt ill prepared, which I will not have, you know, repeat the same mistake twice, is, you know, really understanding the sequencing and understanding what sequence to use in what situation, because the majority of the time it was dead silence. You know, we were on tracks. We were right on them. I felt like there was fresh poop, fresh tracks. I mean, you could tell that they were there. We had plenty of water sources, food sources. We found bedding areas. But the problem is I didn't have the knowledge on the sequencing to call to get them riled up, being the time of the season it was. So yeah, it was a good experience.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, you landed right in the right spot. I mean, you're hiking in, you're on the trail. And I recommended you guys not hike in the 6.5 miles, but it was on a trail system. So I, you know, that doesn't detour me as bad. Um, but yeah, I think you guys did great. You landed there, you were on elk immediately, and unfortunately, you know, the circumstances where you guys had to come back, and didn't get to capitalize on what sounded like a really good area. So I think that's success right there off the bat. If you, I mean, you're bumping elk and you're on your hike in, you can't go wrong there. You know, as soon as that happens, it's basically drop camp and hit the bushes, right, Eric?
That's right. Yeah, that's, I'm glad to hear that you were making calls. I mean, a lot of times I've had guys come out and we practiced here before we've gone out on the hunt. And then once we get out there, it's like stage fright. They're afraid to even make a sound because either they weren't practicing enough or they think they're going to make the wrong sound or not sound as good as maybe I was because I had a lot more experience. But that's how you learn it. It's trial and error. You got to get comfortable making those sounds. Like
Well, and
when we go hunt this round, it'll be the same thing. You
yeah.
just got to get more comfortable with your calling and calling at the right times. But I can't wait to actually hunt with Ben now because dude, there's nothing funner than getting a new guy. Because man, I'm telling you, I don't know about I'm just speaking for myself, Ben, but I couldn't kill a big enough bull that would make me more excited than to have a new guy and be able to call a bull in for him and watch him experience his first kill. There's nothing like that. So, man, I know on my end, I'm sure Cole's feel the same way. We're going to do everything we can to put you in the right spot to be successful, man. It's going to be awesome.
I told you, Ben. I told Ben, I was like, Eric's the type of guy, he's going to have a tag in his pocket and he's going to make sure you get the first shot. That's just the way
Yeah,
it is. But
absolutely. Yeah.
what's cool is whenever we go to Colorado, I've actually been doing some talking and man, I've got some spots already picked out and I'm excited about. But what's cool is I'm not going to have a tag in Colorado. You guys are going to be my two shooters, and it's really I mean,
Very cool.
I haven't had this situation since Kyle hunted with me, and I'm just so excited to really be able to get back there and drag these bulls across y'all or cows, whatever it is. I mean, we're going to have either sex tags, so it's going to be a lot of freaking fun. And the places that I have picked out that we're going to be going is, excuse me, some of it is so vastly different than what Eric is used to hunting because it is massive, massive country. But then if things don't pan out there, I've got some places that are very unconventional that are holding elk, and it's gonna be wild what we what we run into because
Oh, I can't wait, dude.
oh, it's going to be so good. I'm excited. I don't want to say too much on here because you know how it is. But that's you know, I think it's so cool because Ben, you're really going to be able to get that firsthand, really be able to see the nuances and the things that we just gloss over. You're going to be able to pick that stuff up and really open your eyes to how exactly we move through the woods and what it looks like to pick out camp if we're going to be back there in the back country, or if we're just going to stick to the trucks, which I like to be so mobile now. Like the way Eric and I hunted last year, we had several spike camps, I guess we can call it, Eric, or base camps maybe, that
Yeah.
we drove the truck out of every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric, tell them about I mean, tell them about last season, how it looked and what we were doing, because in that unit we were hunting, there's a road every 2 miles. Like we can walk in a distance in any direction and end up hitting a road or somewhere where you can get a buggy or an ATV or something like that.
Yeah, it's basically an endless road system through there, whether it's a two track or you've got a pretty well defined road, ATVs or pickup trucks. It almost seems like there hasn't been a hill that Cole and I have climbed up on top of and we find a road. So
Yeah.
I think the first time that you and I hunted or were in that area, that kind of shocked us. But
Yeah.
the animals are used to it. All these years, they're used to that kind of traffic. But I think the thing that surprised me the most when we hunted it last year was bedding areas. That kind of shocked me a little bit because I'm used to finding bedding areas in certain locations, and it was just different. They weren't bedding where I thought they would bed. We just not couldn't seem to cat. I think we caught them one time, right? One time that you had that
Yeah.
opportunity. That was really the time
Yeah.
that we found big herd bedding down. But that was kind of shocking. But I mean, we just
Yeah,
we use that to our advantage, and we picked out different spots. Those roads allowed us to get to some country that were
yeah.
holding elk. So
Yeah. And what was so crazy is we were mobile and in the truck, and what it looked like for us, y'all, just so you know, like we were getting up at 3:30 in the morning. We would jump in the truck with a bucket full of coffee, and we would cruise the roads, and we would just go locate elk. That's all we would do. If we got a bugle at 3:30 in the morning, we'd drop a pin on Onyx, and a couple of those bulls we drove right past them. Like we bugled here and up the road, he was right off of the road, and we just got back in the truck and drove right past them. So we were able to locate elk like that. But then as soon as daylight hit, it was the craziest thing. They were very there was a few days in there where we didn't get much action, and it really took us thinking outside of the box to get some encounters and to really make things happen. Um, Ben, I'm curious, after doing the backpack thing and you guys hiking in there, um, like what's your thoughts about that backcountry? Because um, I think now, knowing what I know now, the possibilities are endless right there at the road. It's really surprising to me. And I think so many guys are passing up opportunities to get as deep as they possibly can, and especially during the early season, because those elk haven't been pushed back to those areas yet. And there are a few of them that are stationed back there. But what's your thoughts about the, the whole backpack thing and wanting to go deep and, you know, carry all this stuff with you?
My first thought is it's heavy.
Yeah.
And
Do you know what your pack weighed rigged
I
out
want to
with
say it
food and
was
everything?
somewhere between 95 and 100 pounds.
No way, dude. So that's just, you're not even hauling any meat yet. That's just your camp and things to eat.
Lock,
And
stock, and barrel. That was everything to survive.
yeah,
I think I brought like 10 days worth of food, which that takes
that's
up
a lot.
space, and there's a little bit of weight in that. Yeah, it was heavy.
man, that's that is extreme.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah, I should have looked at your list a little bit closer because I think a lot of guys, well, it's just a natural thing. Like you think you need so much. And then when you really get out there, you're not digging in through those packs and through all the pockets and stuff like that to you really the bare necessities. I barely even bring a medical kit now. I have some tape and stuff to be able to get me off the mountain, some blood clot and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's very, very minimal. The only thing that I'm packing is going to be my food, and that varies between 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds per day on average whenever I'm doing the back country. What's crazy is my very first backpack was a lot like yours, Ben. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 pounds. I've posted pictures of it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And it was a steel frame, and now I've got a much lighter backpack using the Exo pack. But my total pack weight now, with I would say between 3 and 5 days, because realistically, man, unless you're just really into the elk, you're not going to be staying in that area that long. Usually 3 to 4 days is going to tell me whether or not I'm going to want to stay there or I'm going to move to another area. And most of the times we're moving to another area. Would you agree, Eric?
Yeah, I mean it's been different for me in New Mexico because our we have units. So when I was hunting in the backcountry there, I was pretty much in there for the whole time. So and no water, so I would have to go in. When we had horses, we'd haul all the water in, but many years it was me going in 3 weeks before with some buddies and hauling all of our water. And basically, I always kept it to a gallon a day. Like that's what I had lived off a gallon. That was it. When I ran out, I didn't,
Yeah,
so I had to get all
that's
my water
tight.
in there. Yeah, so then I could get my food. But I've done it
Yeah.
for 10 days. But yeah, it's a lot of weight. You start getting your
See,
food, but
even
keeping my clothes minimum and making sure we're not bringing duplicates of stuff. You know, I've got a stove. He's not going to, my partner's not bringing a stove, and just really not trying to coordinate all that. So we're not dragging the same thing through there in your kill kit.
yeah. Yeah, I think my pack weight now is somewhere around 45 pounds, total with, I would say, 4 to 5 days of food. And that
Yeah.
includes, you know, my burner, a little pot, my fuel, my water filter. Usually I've got two platypus bags um, that are 3 liters each, plus a 1 liter Nalgene. And then my camp setup is super light because I typically either camp right on the ground with just a sleeping pad and a sleeping bag with a tarp over me, or I do the hammock setup. So
Yeah.
it's super light, super easy, and it's very minimal. Like, I'm not carrying more than one knife. I'm not carrying a bunch of gadgets and things like that. I might have an Allen wrench or two that fits the sights on my bow if I'm shooting my compound. But for the most part, you don't, uh, guys just tend to pack their fears and they think they need all these things. And when really you get out there and you realize, hey, I've been out here for 4 days. I've never touched any of those things. You just got to really think about, like, man, I had my cousin's buddy came with us one time. He packed a freaking chair in there with him. Do you have a chair with you, Ben?
No, no, I didn't.
It's that's crazy. A chair, like a fold out aluminum chair. Because I was like, man, I mean,
Yeah.
you're really wanting to be comfortable, you know. It's To me, I'm gonna suck it up because I don't want to have to carry more than I have to, you know. So let's dive
Oh yeah.
into let's dive into I guess let's dive into locating our elk, what that looks like whenever we're going into one of these areas. Okay. Ben, how crazy was it whenever you pulled up and you were there at the trailhead and you have this dot on the map where you're wanting to go? What was your plans at being a new hunter and not ever having to go out there and locate any elk? What does that look like for somebody brand new that just set foot in their unit for the very first time?
You know, I wish I had some like sage wisdom or something that I had. I did not have any of that. I just told myself that I was going to put one foot in front of the other and I was just going to get out there and I was going to work the land, travel as much as I could and just call them as I can. And, you know, that was pretty much my mindset. You know, the first thing I thought when I walked up to the trailhead was, oh my God, what did I just sign myself up for? But of course I didn't say that, but it was definitely a dose of reality.
Yeah. The How grand those mountains are, man, especially in Colorado. When you've got a 12,000 footer or 14,000 footer that's staring, you know, right down at you, it's very daunting. And to think, and especially when you get to walking up that trail and you've got all this crap on your back, and then you start passing a camp or something and you're seeing people, huh, Eric? I know where you
Oh
hunt that
yeah.
it tears you down whenever you start really committing to an area like that. You just have to buckle down and know that those animals are in the area, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And just because somebody's there, I mean, I can't count the times I've given people some spots, and some of my buddies would say, "Man, why do you give me your?" I said, "Well, there's one thing about me giving them to them, but there's another thing about them actually getting in there because I know what it takes to get
Yeah.
in there and get out of there. So if they've got that, I ain't worried about God making more elk. He'll continue to
Yeah.
create bulls, but it's you got to put that effort in, and so I
I
don't worry
always had
about
a
that.
rule. I always had a rule whenever I was going in, if I cut fresh boot tracks or if I came up on somebody's camp there on the trail or whatever, then I would always make it a point to hike a mile past the last footprint,
Yeah, get away
that
from them.
I, you know, that way I know that I'm not going to be. And then the next morning or that night, I would go even further to do my scouting in the opposite direction just to try to keep, just to try to keep those fresh woods in front of me and stay out of stay out of that buffer zone of about a mile off of any trail or road, unless you're hunting out of the truck. And then I think that's a different scenario, what that looks like. So Eric, when you're hiked in back there and you've got your spike camp set up, you've got everything dialed in that night, and opening morning is the next day. What does that night look like for you? And maybe what does that next morning, or even couple days look like whenever you first get into your area?
I make sure I got my camp, everything set up, and then I like being up in there because it gives me a chance to listen. So I'm listening for elk, and a lot of times you're going to start hearing them. So I've got my GPS out, and I'll start marking spots where, okay, I'm hearing a bull off on this side. I'm hearing something here. Kind of get a look at the terrain, and then I'm up at dark, man. I'm just itching to go. So typically, what I'll do is get out there, and then I'll like where I've been hunting backcountry. I've got some ridge lines that I like to get up on. I'm usually up above the elk. I kind of like them coming up at me and me not chasing them, and I got to play the wind, obviously. But then I like to get out there, start casting some calls, and still see, okay, yeah, that bull's still there. I'm not hearing that, you know what I mean. Then I'm gonna make the best decision I can based on the wind, the terrain, and then it's the hunt is on, man. It's the chase. But I'll work
So
all these spots that I've had for a while, like going to Colorado. It's gonna be a little bit different because I don't know that terrain. But it's
yeah.
a lot of it's going to be pre-scouting things. I'm going to rely on you for stuff, but yeah, I'm going to be looking for things, even hiking in. I'm going to be looking for areas that I think may be holding elk and using my ears. I'm going to be looking for sign. That's where hiking in. Just all those little things to kind of tee me off, and then I'm going to just work that plan. I'm going to look for bedding areas, ridge lines, fingers, water sources, food sources. Just, just,
So what is
I know
that?
it's going to be a mo.
So
Go ahead.
for the new guy that's sitting out there and they're sitting there
Yeah.
thinking like, I haven't even really, I haven't really been anywhere in this unit or anything. I just now hiked in. I'm wore out. I did 6.5 miles and 3,000 foot the day before. Um, and why would
Hydrate.
you pick? For sure, hydrate. I mean, if you guys are coming from out of state or low elevation, you need to be hydrating and taking a little bit of aspirin like a week before, just to kind of thin that blood out. Because as
Yeah.
soon as you get up there and you notice you have a headache, you're getting into some altitude sickness right there off the bat. So that's a
Yeah.
great thing to say. And just make sure you stay on top of that too, because I know when Kyle and I would hunt at 11,000, 12,000 foot, a lot of times we'd be up there for 6 or 7 days. And I mean, you could feel hypoxia starting to come in, that fluid in your lungs. So make sure you're paying attention and make sure you're there with your partner. And, if you notice that they're kind of dragging butt and, just make sure you're not getting in a bad way because, I've heard of guys having to come down off the mountain because they went up too fast. So
Yeah.
make sure that you're doing that. But what I wanted to say is I love that you immediately talked about going to the very top of a ridge. So when you're talking about a top of a ridge, you and I both know that you already have an area picked out where you think the elk are going to be coming from a nighttime
Hmm.
area and coming
Right.
to a daytime area, right?
Correct. Yep.
Ben, as a new guy, if you were to think about an elk nighttime area, what does that look like to you?
Um, for me, it would be a lowland, probably with a water source with plenty of food to eat. Um, it would be in a valley, if I had to guess. It's going to be lower than what a ridge would be or a ridge line.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And depending on where you are, it could look like the elk go up. Sometimes in some of that plateau country that we hunted, Eric, they actually would hang out in the bottoms where or they would hang out in the tops where there's these big plateaus and meadows and stuff like that. And then they would dive off the sides and get into a bedding area. And that's what was weird to us too, because sometimes they would just stay up on top and they would just be out in the middle of a random area. Okay. But the majority of the time, that's exactly what it looks like. Is it's an area that they're going to go, a big park, a big meadow, a hay field, an ag field, some alfalfa, whatever it is, if there's private land nearby. And Eric, we saw elk moving. I mean, they would go 6 or 8 miles to go to these alfalfa fields and then come all the way back across all this private property to go bed down on the public land up in the treetops, right?
Yep.
So
for sure.
being able to identify the nighttime sign and the daytime sign is going to help you guys extremely, because you don't want to be wasting your time in an area that the elk only come whenever it's dark, and you can't shoot an elk while it's dark. Okay.
No.
So make sure you're paying attention to that. Yes, it's fresh sign. Yes, there's droppings everywhere that smears like paint. Yes, there's fresh wallow right here, and you can just tell that it's just, there's got to be elk right here somewhere. Well, if you're bugling and you're on the south side of a ridge that's 1,000 foot to the top, and then it drops off that backside, more than likely they're up and over that where the heat is
never
not
gonna
so
hear
bad
you.
during the day. Yeah, they're not even hearing you. You're bugling at all the other hunters that like the big wide open areas. So that's something that we key in on, is making sure that you are in an area that is going to be holding elk during daylight hours. Don't be wasting your time and covering or going. It's fine to go validate and confirm that sign that's in the nighttime area, because then you can look on your map and you can pick out the north slopes, or maybe it's a west facing slope or whatever it is that gets shade all day. And then you can narrow down your area. You can take 90% of the area away and understand that there's 10% of that area that is holding animals. And when you learn that 10%, your success rate goes through the roof. And a lot of people, I think, get hung up on that. Ben, you guys, so when y'all hiked in, did you have 2 full days of hunting, or what did that look like? Did y'all hike in super early in the morning and then you had that day?
Yeah, so we hiked in early in the morning. I think we got there like right at daybreak. But obviously carrying that much weight for that far, it took us a while to get up to the top. And by the time we had gotten there, we were both pretty worn out, but we ended up probably traveling about a half a mile diameter around the camp. So just kind of feeling it out, seeing what's around, seeing what features. And like I had already scoped this thing out pretty good. So I kind of already understood the slope. And also too, to go back onto your campers, we ran into one group, one tent that was like 2 miles further down the mountain than we were. So we knew that we had plenty of leeway to go to the west side. So that would have been a south facing slope that went into a valley that had a north facing slope. So that's kind of where we figured they were going to be. So anyways, we spent some time, I wouldn't say we hunted it real heavy just because of the hike and all that. And then the next day we got up and had a full day of hunt, where we were, I was trying to get up, kind of like Eric was saying, we were up on a ridge, or on the south side ridge, looking down into the valley, trying to see what we could, find coming up or moving around. And that was about all we got. Then at that point in time, we had to kind of make the decision if we were going to be able to stay or not. So we stayed that night and then hiked down the next day.
Okay. And so what was why did you pick that campsite? What made you pick the 6.5 miles? Did you have a pin drop there and then you guys just hiked to that pin?
Well, my thought process was there's only a certain number of people stupid enough to go that far, and I happen to fall into that category. So I was kind of hedging my bets that there weren't going to be too many people that dumb, and I was right. And then obviously I had a good teacher that gave me some pointers on what to look for as far as places, and so it fit the bill. There was only one path to get in. I mean, it's right at the foot of the Continental Divide. So, you're talking however many acres it was, a bunch. And there's only,
Yeah,
one
huge.
road in, and that's about it. So it was really desolate. I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of traffic. It was no vehicles, no anything like that. So that was kind of why we decided or settled. And we had a good water source. So we stayed right on a lake that had a stream that
Perfect.
ran out of it. So I wasn't having to scramble for water every day. Now we've stumbled across other water sources, but I wanted to make sure that we had an ample source of that. So that was kind of why we chose that particular area.
Perfect. That's
Yeah, I like it.
other than hunting in, yeah, other than hunting in areas like Eric does, where you have to haul in all of your water. Um, I'm gonna do it one day, but man, that sounds so difficult because water is probably the heaviest thing that you're gonna carry. And with the good thing about Colorado, y'all, is there's water just flowing out of every little drainage, every little bottom. I mean, it's crazy some of the places that has water, but that's one of the points I was wanting to get at, Ben, is I always make sure that I set up to where I have plenty of water right there. And I know we're not going to have to be hunting down water. That's one of the worst things I think that I've done in the past is I didn't camp on water. I camped, you know, 2 miles from water, and then I would hike down and I would go way down. And for the elk, it's no big deal. But for me, to be able to haul 5 gallons of water up every 3.5, 4 days, was such a feat that, man, I ended up getting more wore out. Like there was just a whole day of to haul water, and
Yeah.
what a waste of my time when really I probably could have camped down there and just hiked up to my hunting area every day and been in better shape, because you start to save water or you're trying to not drink all the water because you're worried, and then next thing you know you're getting dehydrated, and it's not a good thing. So that's the reason I asked that, is I always set up on water now, and unless I'm hunting out of the truck, and then I know I've got plenty of water there with me.
Yeah, and the other
So that's
thing
awesome.
is, it's not just it's you need plenty of water, but also, man, I pound the electrolytes, so I take a lot of sodium and potassium because
Yeah,
you're just gonna burn through that all day long. So sometimes you may start feeling a lightheadedness, you get the headaches. A lot of time it's not even the dehydration that's getting you. It's that you're losing all those minerals. You're losing sodium and potassium. So I'll make sure I have
yeah,
plenty of that. So
Yeah, I had 2 gallons. So I had a gallon Camelback, and then I had another gallon like Nalgene, or like a standalone bottle. And
yeah,
one thing that I was glad that I thought of doing was I packed Noon tablets. I don't know if you're familiar with those or not, but
yeah.
they're the ones,
Mhm.
you can break up and put in the water, but they had caffeine in it. So I actually didn't need to bring coffee, but I'd cram like 5 of them dudes in that gallon of water. And, your body, when you're up there, you're so thirsty and you don't really know why, but you'll be craving salt or all kinds of different things. And I was really glad to have thought about electrolytes.
Yeah. Yeah. And even your food
yeah,
sources, you can take things that are salty. And obviously, you crave sweet stuff too, but some salty things are always good, like corn chips or just different things,
yeah.
pretzels, something that's got a lot of sodium in it. So,
That is one thing that I do pack into my food is I'll usually pack some Tony Chachere's or some just salt and pepper, because it's crazy, how much you crave that whenever you're out there. So if we bust a grouse or something like that or whatever, even in my mashed potatoes, you just mix in that good amount of salt so that so that you're taken care of there.
yeah.
Because man, last thing you want to be doing is cramping up and be behind and not playing catch up with water is just not fun. It just,
Yeah. That's actually something I
especially if you
put in my
start
kill.
cramping, man.
Yeah, that's what I put in my
Go
kill
ahead,
kit
Eric.
now too. In my kill kit, I put those element packets. You got 1,000 milligrams of sodium. I think it's 500 potassium. I can't remember, but anyway, I always keep a couple of those because man, once you bust an elk down, like before I take off, and you start cutting an elk up, you don't realize how much energy you burn. And I always make sure to
Yeah.
pound a good source of sodium before, even a little bit of food, but make sure I've got something
Let's talk
specific for that time after I kill.
Yeah, let's talk about your kill kit. I'm curious to know what's in it. You've mentioned it a couple times.
I
Yeah,
was
so my
just about
kill
to ask
kit,
the same question.
yeah, so I have my bag is just specifically I've got my game bags with that. I've got some surgical gloves. I usually take a couple pair. They don't, the latex doesn't weigh anything. And then I like to use the surgical knives. So I've got the outdoor edge. I carry that pack with some extra blades. I always have some rope with me. And then I've got a poncho, some plastic I can lay out so I can lay my animal on that as I'm tearing it up. That's all I carry in that kit, plus the little bit of food. But that stays in there the whole time. So if I bust something, I can get it hung up in a tree, let it air out. I got it covered, and then get ready to start hauling meat. I
That,
don't. You guys carry something different?
my kill kit is, I want to say it's always, that's the one thing that will never leave my backpack the entire
Mm-hmm.
time that I'm on my hunt. Every single morning that I go out, I'm intending on packing and packing meat and pulling a bull out somewhere. That's the way I think
Yep.
about it every single day. Every morning, I'm like, okay, today's the day I'm going to kill a bull. I know I've got my kill kit in here. I've got water. I know that's the minimum that I need right then and there. But in my kill kit, it's the same thing. I've got, I can't remember. I think it's an outdoor edge. Actually, Chav gave that to me for setting up his pop-up line in Colorado 3 years ago.
Oh,
It is an
nice.
outdoor edge. And then I got a ground cloth because I like to either be able to lay my meat out, or I've already got pre-made loops, to where basically I'll loop a paracord around a tree, and then it has a half hitch in it, and then I just slide the hoof of the elk up in that loop so that I can basically debone hands free and not have to worry about anybody holding on to the quarter while my other partner, or if I'm solo, whatever, I can go back and work on the bull. And I have enough for 4 quarters, and then I always, my game bags, I have 5 of them. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the name of it. Uh, Aaron's gonna be pissed that I don't remember. Anyways, I've got my game bags, I've got my knife, I even have my tag in there. That way I don't have to scramble for
Mm-hmm.
my tag. It's already in there and ready to go. I usually have a little bit of tape, so that I can have it. I have a marker in there. I also pack a snack, or a Mountain Ops drink mix, some Pedialyte. I mean, whatever it is, to be able to give me that big boost. It's always got something caffeine in it, to where I can get that jump to start hauling meat once I get that animal taken care of. That's usually my ritual. Is I'll wash my hands after cleaning that bull, and then pound a couple of energy drinks, and then it's time to haul meat.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Something
but
to
So
yeah,
are
get
y'all
you
pretty
get you
simple.
get you going.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I was just gonna ask the clarifying question. When y'all are saying a kill kit, are y'all carrying this inside of your bag that is just within a game bag that it's always on you? Or is this a completely separate bag, like a backpack or something that you're
No, no,
carrying differently?
nope. It
Yeah, go
sits
ahead,
in
Eric.
my backpack. Yeah, it just sits in my backpack. So I've got a Sawtooth 80 bag from Mystery Ranch. So it unzips, kind of folds open. I've got a pouch there, and I just keep it right in there. Yeah. So
For those of
this
y'all
kit
watching
looks a
this,
little different.
you can probably see it pretty good, but uh, um,
Yeah.
so this is, from Viome Outdoors. My buddy Aaron Schmoss gave me all this stuff, and this is kind of what it looks like. It's basically a zipper bag. It's waterproof,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the inside, this stays at the bottom of my pack. I'll actually put this in my water bladder sleeve, so that it's not taking up any room in the main part of my pack, because this is the first thing that goes in my pack, and it's probably the last thing that I pull out, during a hunt. But it just opens up, and then inside of here, I've got, that's my snack bag from last year, but I got my outdoor edge knife, and it's just, this actually is just packed down and stuffed into the pack and forgotten about until I draw blood. And then that's whenever this thing gets brought out. It's real simple, and don't overthink it. You don't need a bunch of stuff. If you want to put some rubber gloves in there, pop a couple rubber gloves in there just to keep the cleanup a little bit easier. But really, you guys, your good knife, make sure it's sharp or you have replacement blades for it. I don't like to carry a knife sharpener anymore because one of those blades on that outdoor edge will get me through an entire elk. I can do an entire elk, debone it, everything, without having to worry about resharpen or any of that. That's nonsense. You're packing your fears away with that. So streamline your stuff, know what you're going to use. And, like I have a ground tarp. Well, it can also double as a little awning so that if we start getting dumped on, I can whip that thing out. We can all sit underneath it and clean the elk. And it's not my main tarp that goes back with my hammock and stuff. Super lightweight. It's only maybe 6 foot by 6 foot, just enough for us to huddle up underneath or to lay meat directly on it. If that's the situation.
Well, elk, Cole, you're going to have to bring you a knife sharpener because we're going to punch 2 this time. So it's like you're going to be
that's
deboning
fine.
double.
I've got that sucker's got two different blades on it. I'll bring 3 because I'm going to knock a bull down in New Mexico too.
Revenge.
Yeah, for sure. So it's going to be really fun because we're going to be, just like I always do, I hunt the entire season anytime that I can. And it's going to be really fun to go from such vast different country in New Mexico and hunting the early season, which is my favorite, and then rolling into the rut hunt in Colorado. So we're going to have everything from, bulls not talking to, playing the silent game. Me and Eric have some tricks up our sleeve that we're going to break that the little silent.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we are.
I plan on hopefully filming this hunt. I do have our hunt from last year that I should edit and put out. But I don't want to give away the secret of that, Eric, until we put it on film and get the reaction of these bulls. So that's a little cliffhanger for everybody that's listening and watching.
Perfect.
This technique,
I'm looking forward to Colorado, man.
technique is. Go ahead. You think what? It's gonna be good.
No. Finish what you were saying. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I have so many different places that I've hunted in Colorado, and it's just, to me, I'm really excited to be there to call for you guys. And I really think that, in the amount of time that we have, we're going to get it done. And it's because we're going to be aggressive, and then we're going to be we're going to know how to hit the gas pedal and know when to hit the brakes. Last year, I think Eric was probably like, what is this dude doing? Because I was uber aggressive. I had never hunted somewhere where I only had a short period of time to get it done. I've always been able to be like, well, if I have to, I can talk to my wife and I can stay a few extra days. And then usually I would get it done in the last couple days that I was, that I had to beg for. But like New Mexico, I can only hunt from the 1st until the 14th, and then it's over. And then, but I get to extend my season and go to Colorado with you guys. And it's just, I think the elk are a little different in Colorado. Like, they are so callable. It's not even funny. It's just, and I don't know, maybe we just hit a lull last year, Eric, because the amount of bugles compared to the amount of elk that we saw way more elk than we ever heard.
Absolutely.
So
and we were using techniques that weren't using techniques that weren't vocal. There weren't some, right, that were bringing animals.
Let's get into a little bit of that. I don't want to break that portion out, but
no, I get you.
How much of our calling do we do that is non-vocal?
A lot.
Okay, so when you say a lot, what does that look like?
I
whenever
would
you are
say
non-vocally calling an elk?
I think it's probably 60-70% of the time. We're using the terrain, we're using different things. We're using elk behavior, things that they
Yeah.
normally do, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so it's not that I had to have a diaphragm in my mouth. Now they support that. You and I like to call a lot too,
A
but
lot.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's yeah, but it's these nonverbal things too. Raking and uh, kicking things around, making noise.
Yep.
One
Yep.
of our little secret tools. I'm not telling you. I'll keep that out.
Yeah.
But
We're not going to let it out
yeah,
yet.
no, no,
But
not
yeah,
yet. But yeah,
exactly. Just some of those things like I do have bugle tube right here, and maybe this is vocal, maybe not, but just sitting over there panting and
yeah,
raking a tree, like,
yeah,
and I'm talking about doing that for 10 or 15 minutes and then hanging out for 30 to 45, and while continuing to do that every 10 minutes or so, you know, that's huge without ever even making a cow sound or anything. A bull, if you're in the area where you think there's elk without making a verbal sound, all you have to do is pick up a big tree limb or a good stick and just get to working on a small tree. And that is calling elk without having to be vocal. Okay.
yeah.
There's so many people that I think are losing out on opportunities, and maybe they go into the early season and they're carrying around like a hoochie mama and they're just bashing that thing, meow, 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 and it's August 31st or it's September 1st, and the bulls could care less about a cow, because a cow sitting over there making noises without a bull means that cow is just a cow. She's not in
Yeah,
heat, and a bull is not really going to care unless he's a raghorn or a real young bull. He's not really going to care that there's a cow over there, because why?
it's not. They're not. She's not. She's not releasing estrus, man. She's not releasing that pheromone in
That's
the
right.
air.
And there's not
So
a bull there trying to protect her. So like in
yeah,
early season, I I don't even really like to have a cow call unless I present that situation. Unless they answer to that right off the bat,
yeah,
then I play on to that. But a lot of times during early season, I'm ripping a bugle. Almost always, I'm way heavy on bugles than I am on cow calls, and it's just because I feel like when I come into an area, and Eric, we've talked about this a lot.
yeah,
When we come into an area and we let a bugle out, we're the brand new guy on the block. Nobody's ever heard our voice or they've forgotten about us from last year. We come in there and it piques their interest because they're building the urge to breed, right? And if a new guy comes in, they can't tell by my voice how big I am and how tough I am and how strong I am, right?
right,
So they have to come identify who I am and where they stand in the pecking order or the breeding order, that group, that herd locally has. Okay. Every single one of those elk know every one of their voices. And as soon as you pipe off and you're the new guy, it piques that interest to the herd bull or the even the young bull, because he's got to come over and see if you are bigger than him, right? So we always try to key in on that. And I so want to talk about our deal. Let's just talk about it, Eric. There's not
all
very many
right.
people watching it. Nobody listens to our podcast. Okay. This past year, early season, think about that, okay? The bulls are
Yeah,
working out their pecking order. We know there are bulls in the area, but they're not vocalizing back to us. Something is happening to where they are. My phone's trying to die. It's my camera. Something is happening to where they're not being vocal back to us, and whatever the situation might have been. It was crazy to me that this situation that we presented got a response immediately. and it was not a verbal call. Eric, you were the one doing this. I was the one up front. I was the one stationed ready to harvest. What was the calls that you did
Well,
that
I got the idea from you, so I can't take credit for it. But I brought a pair of elk horns, and so I was doing some rattling with some elk horns and just
this
crashing,
dude
making them
carried
sound like they were
around?
fighting. Yeah, pretty
Dude,
good size of horns. But yeah, once we
thank
started
you
that,
so
it
much
was
for
like a game changer.
it
What's
really
that?
was. It really opened my eyes because then it showed the other bulls in the area that there was a spar going down, and that
Yeah,
spar could have been over maybe a cow, or it was just a pecking order. And it blew my mind that immediately we have a bull running up to us, and he runs in dead downwind. And unfortunately, that's just where he was bedded. He comes running right in, and he got right in my scent trail and immediately stopped and just locked up. And Eric, I don't think you could even see what was going on because you were back there making so much commotion and just going to town rattling with these horns that this dude was just, he was convinced that there was elk up there, even after smelling me 1000%.
yeah.
He bounded off and went down and across this little ravine, and he parked himself over there and rubbed a tree. Just and we continued on. He never barked, he never did anything. All he
I
did,
made a
he was just
sound.
so convinced. He went over there and waited to
Yeah.
see whenever the fight or
Yeah.
the spar
And,
was over.
the only thing that messed that up is that it happened so fast that I didn't have a chance. Even before I started that, this is one thing I want to do. Next time I pull those horns out, I'm going to make sure and I'm going to figure out a way to hook these horns up. I want to be able to carry it with the decoy out because I want that decoy to be seen. If I had the decoy, I would have been able to,
Yeah,
because I was actually had to get on the ground because the direction he was coming. That the terrain's a little bit more open than we would have liked it to be, and where I
yeah,
was
it's very
positioned,
difficult.
where I was positioned, I didn't have I had to get on the ground, and I climbed over a log, and I was trying to hide, but I couldn't get that decoy out. If I would have been able to flash that and have those horns where he could see me moving and raking the tree, dude, he would have come on a string. But I made that
Yeah,
mistake. I thought, man, I should have had that stinking decoy out, but it won't happen this
yeah.
year. Yeah, but those
And
horns
when that
were,
happened, it was money. And when that happened, it was like 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, wasn't it?
yep,
I mean, it was
yeah, it
the
was,
dead heat of the day. Dead heat of the
yeah,
day. I think we actually parked the truck. Okay, this is so crazy. We drove the
yeah.
truck down this trail, parked the truck. We walked out on this point 100 yards, 150, maybe 200 yards
That's it.
from the truck.
That's it.
This
Yeah,
elk 1,000% heard us drive up, shut the doors, do all this, and we were intending on them being down in this canyon, right? So
yeah,
we walk over and get on the edge of this canyon, and we start doing this rattling sequence, and it just immediate explosion comes running dead at us. And unfortunately, he caught my wind, but if it had been just a little bit different scenario, or if he didn't catch our wind, I mean, that was going to be a dead bull at like 10 or 15 yards. Because
yeah.
whenever I drew my bow back, he was standing at 25, dead
Right.
frontal. Um, yeah,
Well, even a few
it,
days before that, when you and I heard those two bulls sparring early in the morning,
yeah,
I didn't have the horns that time. I had the decoy,
no,
but that would
yeah,
have been the perfect scenario because I could have pulled back. I could have walked them right to you. They would have never known. I would have been cracking them horns because they circled us. They were so interested, and they were decent bulls. You
yeah.
could have killed one of those. They weren't huge, but they were bigger
I
than the
could
one
have
that we called up. But we
for
could have brought
sure.
them right in shooting range. I could have, man, that would have been a cool
Well,
setup. So
whenever I ranged that bull when he got the closest to us, and this is without the rattling horns, but he was only 35 yards from me. I don't know if you
yeah,
could tell that or not. I know you were standing back there like begging for me to shoot, but I just,
no, I wasn't.
man, it
I
was,
knew you were gonna pass them up, but I
yeah.
thought it was cool.
Um,
But I thought
that
the
was
whole
my first
time,
time.
man, I didn't have those horns.
my first time ever passing any elk ever. So it was definitely it was heartbreaking, but it was a blast at the same time. And what a
We
great
had already seen
learning
that
opportunity.
big bull. We had seen that big
Well,
bull like 2 days before. Yeah.
yeah, we called him in on the second day of the season. Same thing.
Yeah.
It was 11 o'clock, something like that. No, it was one. It was
That
one
was
or two
after it's like
o'clock.
2:30 in the it was like 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yep. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden we hear just like a bugle fest going on down in the valley. I'm like, what
Yeah.
is going on? And what had happened was they came out of their bed and they came down into this canyon and came down to water. And then what we were hearing is the bull taking the cows back up to the bed. And that dude was lip balling me like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, he
And
was
this is
roaring.
whenever I was just uber aggressive. We literally ran in a circle.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a mile and a half circle, ran around and then ran right up in the middle of these elk. There had to have been 20, there had to have been 15 or 20 in that herd. And all of a sudden I'm coming up and the bull sounds like he's so much further away than what he really was. And I was cow calling my way to him and he kept lip balling, telling me to come on, come on. We're right here. We're right here. All of a sudden I look up and there's a cow bedded right here underneath a bush. And
Yeah.
she's not even paying attention to me coming in because he's
No.
calling me too. And there's another cow. I'm like, oh crap, I'm in them. Like I'm already too far at this point. I've already pushed in too close. And I didn't realize it because the bull was sounding off. He was at the other end of the group. And
Yeah.
it was just I got uber aggressive and I should have waited and held back and been a little bit more patient because I think the way that he was calling, if I would have just let you do your thing, Eric, and get back there behind me and do, the partner setup, I think it could have worked out a little bit better than what it did. But, I had
Yeah,
that
and then
bull at
you
20
got pinned.
yards.
You got pinned by that
I did.
satellite bull that was with him. So the game
Yeah.
was on. But maybe if I would have circled him a little bit and tried to call his cows, I got between him and his cows if you would have. But it
Woulda,
happened
coulda,
fast,
shouldas,
man.
man.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like
We chased
every
him.
time yep, there were times that I left the decoy at the truck. And every time I left the decoy at the truck, I had an opportunity where I needed the decoy. And then
Yeah,
vice versa with the rattling horns. If even could you imagine on that scenario, you stepping back and rattling back there with me cow calling, that bull
totally.
would have come running up to us,
Yeah, because
man. That
I would have put on I would have put on I would have been calling those cows. I would have been displaying for them and rattling, raking. Oh, dude, I would have had them just ready to come kill me.
yeah.
Dude, we're
So
gonna
I'm
make it
so
up this year.
excited for the early season rattling. Um, Ben, I know what kind of guy you are. I know you've got some questions. So I don't want to be too long on this. I know we've been going for a little bit. We've been going for about an hour. So I want to get into some questions because I love the questions that you come up with being the new guy and you really think through this stuff well. Because it blows my mind the stuff you come up with. I'm like, man, I would never even think to ask that. So let's have it. I know you've got some.
I guess like one question I have is you made the comment that you're looking forward to like the early season like rattling. So it sounds like when you're in that early season, the rattling is going to be like a main focal point. How is that going to look for your late season? Do you anticipate like that rattle to still work? Do you anticipate since they're going to be heavy rut, you're going to take a different approach? I mean, what's your game plan going to be between those two seasons and geographies? And if you can't tell here, that's fine.
Yes.
Just call me and we can talk about it later. But
Yeah, no, no, no. No, I'm going to go ahead and say it now because I really think guys are going to think this is so ridiculous that you're not going to see anybody else carrying horns around in the woods, especially in a backcountry scenario. But as we get closer to the rut, that rattling is going to be even more powerful because it signifies two bulls battling for a cow that is in heat. So what
Yeah.
that tells any other bull out there, what's happening there is they're tangled up and they're in a tiff and there's a cow loose without anybody watching her. And those bulls that we're going to be having respond are immediately going to come into that, because I guarantee you they've never heard a hunter out in the woods rattling like there is a fight. And when you present the right sounds, and we get in there and we start glunking and we start panting and huffing and we start doing some cow calls and then lip balling and raking, and then all of a sudden you smash those horns together like they're fighting, it sells it to them 100% that you are battling for a cow in heat. And that is the whole point of all of September, is to spread their seed, and they have to come see if that's true. That's just the way it is. It's genetically ingrained into them to have to come see that hot cow or get a taste or a smell of her. So
Yeah.
I think that it's just going to ramp up as we go. I'm super excited. Oh man, I'm thinking about areas and I'm thinking about bulls on certain ranches that I've called across the fence, and it's taken me an hour and a half to convince these bulls to come over for me to try to get a shot on them. And now I'm going to sit back there,
Ah,
rattle those horns. I think these whitetail horns will even do a good job too. You smash those suckers together. They
yeah.
hear that, dude. They're coming running. I'm telling you, they're coming running. You had better be up against a tree, or you had better be somewhere protected to where you can shoot from, because when I mean, Eric, we saw it last year. They
Yeah.
literally come running to us.
Didn't we
And
call in? Didn't we call in Wes and those guys?
yeah,
Remember we ran
yeah,
into those guys? Was that cracking the
yep.
horns on them?
Shout
I
out.
can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Hunt Wars. I know we had them with us, but we've definitely I bugled them right to us because
That's what it was. I
it
couldn't remember.
it was screwed up. We had a bull coming, and then they came in and kind of short standed us, and it ended up screwing up I think the wind really got the bull more than anything.
That's a wind.
And then
Right.
they just kept pursuing us, and I didn't want them to go screw up the situation more, so I just bugled them right into us. And
That's what it was. I couldn't remember.
yeah, it was so funny. But yeah, man, I think the rattling is going to work all the way through mid-October, to be honest, because let's just put, when the herds start to split up a little bit, even after September, and you're starting to get into October where there's fewer and fewer cows coming in, when you present that situation of a cow being bred or a cow being fought over, that just tells everybody in the woods that she's hot, and they're going to have to come inspect that. Now, it
Yep.
could look
Especially when
like
you're
that they
making
come
cow
in
sounds
completely
with it too.
silent, Ben.
Yeah.
That's all
You
right.
could be making them cow
Yeah,
sounds,
especially
man.
when you're
It's your hot cow.
Now, does
yep.
your pro tip still stand,
And
Cole, where in that situation, you're like, you repeat the call basically to what you're receiving? Or is this where you're trying to set up a completely
no,
exclusive
the
or
only time
independent
the
scenario?
only yeah, the only time that I recommend guys just repeat the sound that the bull did is when you don't necessarily know what he's saying, or you don't know what you are saying. Okay.
I
There's
fall into that
there's a point.
category.
You do because you can't. I mean, dude, it's taken a long time for me to figure out the vocalizations and what they mean, or what kind of emotion they're putting into that, right? You have to be able to learn to decipher what certain vocalizations sound like, because they could do an exact bugle, and then all they do is put more aggression into that same exact bugle, and it means a different thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as you hear him build the intensity in his calls, that's all I'm wanting you to do also. I want you to reflect the intensity that he's putting off, so that maybe it creates some sort of an urgency, or it sells him that you're trying to basically maybe keep him away because you have a hot cow or whatever the case might be. But the best thing that you can do, like if a bull is chuckling at you, I don't necessarily think that you need to chuckle back at him, because he's asking you to come over there to him, in my opinion. I think whenever you get a bull that chuckles, he's, especially like even with a cow call, if you cow call and a bull chuckles, he's telling you to come over, like, here's the group, here we are, come over to us. I don't think you should ever repeat a chuckle until you get into a situation where you can't advance on him any further. Then if you can chuckle and you've got a good chuckle, then you chuckle at him and you're asking him to come to you, because you need him to close that distance at that point, right? It's the same thing that happens whenever I get to a certain point and I've convinced him that I have a hot cow, and maybe the bull has cows and he doesn't want to leave them. So he's calling me to the group, right? At some point I get to a position to where I can't go any further because I'm going to bust my cover. So I have to get that bull to come to me. Okay. So understanding those certain vocalizations is whenever you can really talk the talk. But if you don't understand what he's telling you, then the best thing that you can do is, if you respond at all, respond with a location bugle. And then if he calls out with a lip ball or whatever, then lip ball back to him, because he's just showing aggression. Okay. And then you cut the distance immediately. Every time, if I make a call, I'm almost always cutting the distance if the wind is in my favor. Always. Yeah. I'm advancing every single time that I possibly can, so that I'm covering that distance and he knows that I'm coming. Especially if he's in one position and he's staying in that position and he's not moving, it kind of tells me that he probably has cows. So I'm trying to cut the distance as soon as I can, as fast as I can. And as soon as I think I don't know where he's at, that's when I'm going to make my next call.
Got it.
Am I getting too deep? Am I getting too deep into any of that?
No, it's perfect. I just have one other question, and it's two parts, and this one's for you, Eric. The first one is and I'm kind of like relating back to the rattling scenario you were bringing up. You had mentioned a decoy. So the first question is what in the hell is a decoy? What does it look like? And how do you use it? The second question,
we have something called the ultimate predator. So Cole, I think he's probably reaching for it. So what's your second question?
Yeah, I'm gonna grab one.
Then the second question I have is you had mentioned recounting that situation. There were some things that you would have done differently, or that you were trying to do. And I guess it's not really a well thought question, but my question is, as a caller in that particular scenario, what would you have done differently to have set yourself up to not have what happened? And then, do you feel like that preparation should go into every single time you're setting up as a caller for a shooter?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So in that scenario, when we went out that afternoon, 100, 150 yards out from the truck, I did not think, because I just started that sequence. I mean, we just started it. So that was one of those situations where he just was coming so fast. We were pinned up. What I should have done, just initially started, I should have already had the decoy out, because that would have had me ready. That's where I messed up. I should have had that. If I'd have had it out, that gives me some cover behind it. He could visually see. I could use the horns, and I could play on him, and give me a chance to back up and get into a position. I could get behind a bush where he's got he can see me, but not completely. I could move it around, flick an ear on it, and really sell that scenario for him. The problem was he came so fast, I couldn't get back to cover. I was basically out in the open. The only thing I could do was lay over a log. But see, I could never get back away from Cole farther to make him walk. I wanted him to walk by Cole. I didn't want him to, where he was at, where he stopped at, I needed him to come probably 20 yards, if that. But that would have sold it. I could have moved back and not worried about him seeing the movement, I could have disguised my movement with that decoy, because that decoy works like a champ. You can mount it on the front of your bow. So just, little things like that sometimes will get you, but it's hunting, you know.
Yeah.
But if I'm gonna
And
pull those horns out, I'm gonna have that decoy. Now I'll have that decoy ready, because I don't know what direction that animal's gonna come from. If he's coming to my side or whatever, still I'd be able to. I'm gonna use that as, a vision, because he's looking. What's he looking for? He's looking for that animal. I want him to have a vision.
yeah.
Oh, there it is. Boom, that sells it. And that's what I didn't do. So I messed that up.
Yeah,
Did
you
I
know
not
what?
answer you?
And really,
Anything else?
I think that was the only question I really have, though, and this is probably something we can talk about in person. Is I'm just kind of curious to see how you use that decoy. Like, I'm just interested to see how you set it up, or you're talking about setting it down depending on the angle of the elk and
Yeah.
stuff like
Well, when
that.
I'm hunting, I use it on the front of my bow, so it mounts to the front of your bow. So
that's why it has
he
this
doesn't.
hole in it.
Yeah, it's got a hole
For
in the
those of y'all
center.
that can't, yeah, that can't
Yeah.
see it, this is a predator decoy. It's the cow decoy. So it's got these little, like this. I have it rigged up as a hook, so we can just hang it on a tree limb. Or it's got Velcro that hooks up to my bow, so I can actually shoot through this hole. And I've had a bull that was totally convinced that this was a real cow. And even after smelling me, he turned around at 74 yards and gave me a broadside shot. I didn't want to take that far of a shot, but he definitely saw this decoy and was convinced that there was, that it was an elk.
Yep. Well,
So what
We
I'm
two
take
hearing is
years
that's a
several.
ago,
necessity.
it works. It works well, Ben. So 2 years ago, I took a guy. It was his first bow hunt. Took him in there. It was second day of the hunt, September 2nd, early season. Got one. I had a faint bugle. I used the sequence where I introduced the cow, uh, basically to this bull, and then I had my shooter set up. I moved back away from him, but I made sure I had that on the front of my bow. So I wanted to pull that bull I wanted to pull that bull to me. He ends up killing that bull, shot him frontal at 20 yards. He didn't move, and he allowed the cows to keep coming to me. And so the cows come up the bottom of this hill, and I'm set up right where their stop and scan was going to be. Man, she popped up, and that's the first she saw that. Man, as soon as she saw that decoy, oh yeah, there's a cow. She just stopped, gave me a perfect broadside shot. I killed her. So I mean, it works really well. But again, it works when you have it out. It doesn't work if you got it sitting in the back of your pack. And you know,
Yeah.
every scenario, you just got to be. I was just just caught me with my pants down. I don't know if I was lazy. It was after lunch. Man, anytime, especially as
Well,
I didn't have a bow in my
we had
hand, I
been
should have had that thing ready to go. No
we had been
excuse,
getting
man.
our
I just screwed that up.
we'd been getting our butt kicked, and really it was just like, I think we had went back to camp, we had lunch or something, and then it was just one of those scenarios where we're like, we can't just sit here. The elk are out there somewhere. Let's go somewhere. Let's pick somewhere we haven't gone yet, and then let's just
Yeah,
go try this, right? We totally did not expect it to work. We were just going out there to take up time so that we could wait for the evening to come around so it would get cooler. And our setup sucked. It really did. Our setup was terrible because we did not expect it to happen like it did. It really was just really stupid on our part, because if had we set up different, that would have been a dead bull
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Because we
Yeah.
were on top of
And
each other
setup,
when I was calling too. That was the other
we
mistake.
were.
You and I are right on
Yeah.
top of each other. You're so experienced. I should have been back up on top of the hill. He would have come running right by you, man. Even if
Yeah.
I didn't have the
Yeah.
decoy, I would have been farther
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, we were almost just kind of hanging out with each other when, and all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh my God, there's an elk running at me,"
Yeah.
and I'm
He's
doing everything
coming. I was like, oh, yeah,
I was like,
it was
right here. I
awesome.
mean, he was galloping, just as fast as this dude comes up there and his tongue's hanging out. I'm like, man, this is
Yeah.
insane.
And
I've never
we
had an
think
elk.
we had seen, didn't we think we had seen that bull like the day before, 2 days before, over by the
Yeah, on the
water?
hill.
I spotted him.
Yep.
Yeah, on the hill. Yeah.
Yep. That's
with his
exactly.
horns.
Yeah, he had basically just he came and was bedded down on that well, it was really kind of north slope there. Um,
Yeah.
so hard to tell in that part of the country because it's everything
Hey,
looks the same no matter what.
yeah.
But
Hey Ben, have you gone through the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy?
Yeah. So I went through it last year. I need to probably do a brush up. I've also got the elk net
Oh,
app.
definitely.
So like
Yeah, perfect.
when I'm rucking my sack, so there's actually a track that's like 2 miles down the road. So I'll go out. Oh, that was another thing, Cole, that you're asking about lessons that I learned. When you're, in Tennessee, the elevation's not real high, but we have lots of mountains and hills. And I was more concerned on the distance that I was going to travel. I knew my distance was going to be 6 miles max. So I got in 6 mile hiking range. But what I didn't consider was how long or what that pace really is when you're out there. And 6 miles in 2.5 hours is different than 6 miles in 5 hours or whatever the time was. So,
yeah,
what I've been doing, go ahead.
mountain miles, you're usually traveling about a mile, mile and a half an hour in and that's in decent country.
Yeah. So like now one of the things that I've supplemented into getting ready for all this is instead of worrying about distance, now I'm worrying about time. So I'm getting a ruck and I'm rucking for 6 hours. And then what I do in that time
Perfect.
is I have my AirPods in and I'm listening to the ElkNut app and I'm sitting there walking around the track looking like some dork, at this high school blowing my bugle tube and stuff while I'm walking around the track all dressed out in camo. So
That's awesome.
I'm sure I'm a spectacle in the town.
Hey, that's what you want to be.
That's what you got to do, man.
Absolutely. That's
And
good.
I would highly recommend if you don't have, I love dragging the tire because you can simulate uphill and downhill. It's really good. Um, just anywhere that you can get a big grass field that nobody's going to care about you tearing up the grass or whatever. Put a harness on
Step
and
ups.
yep, step ups. I love that weighted sled. Drag it backwards to where the lead is between your legs, man, and you get that downhill simulation. It works really, really good. I don't know why, but a lot of people have a really hard time with downhill with their weight. When they're carrying meat out, downhill just destroys a lot of people. So, well, you guys, I don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. And I want to do this again, probably here in a few weeks. We'll just touch back on and we'll get into scouting. I'm going to get to where I can share my screen and I'm going to pick an area and kind of show people what we tend to look for and how to identify the 10% of the land that 90% of the animals are spending their time on. So if you can cut that down and just be able to drop a pin on a map and go there and there be elk. I've done this many times. I know, Eric, you've done it. Joel was shocked at whenever I dropped a pin on his map, and then he walks in there and bumps two elk right out of their beds. So learning the country and learning how to look at a map and identify where the animals are not, I think is very huge. And I think that's going to be our next topic that we're going to tie into here on the Flatlander Fridays here on In the Bush.
Love it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Looking
man.
forward to it.
Well, thank you
Yeah, man.
guys, and thanks everybody. Anybody that's watching this, I know we had a couple of people tune in on YouTube. While I'm here, real quick, those of y'all that are watching, if y'all have a real quick question, if not, I'm going to close this thing out here in just a second. Ben, have you been working on your calls?
Yeah. When I'm walking around the track, I am. I've also got a reed in my car. So when I'm driving to work,
Nice.
I'll be practicing. I'm not admittedly very good. I mean, I know how to make the simple calls, but the sequencing,
Yeah.
getting the grunts and all that different stuff who's the guy on Elk Nut? What's his name?
Paul
Paul
Medell.
Medell.
Yeah, dude, that guy is a monster. And he's doing
Yeah.
stuff and I'm like, I'm worried I'm gonna suck my call down my throat trying to make the sounds he's making.
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
a
Make sure
he's a
you got
master.
make sure you got good control whenever you do that. Eric said, "Are you gonna hunt naked?" I probably will, dude. I got my
Hey,
hoochie mama shorts on right now.
attaboy. I am asking for a friend, man. That's all.
Yeah. What's up, Thomas? Thomas Hawker's watching. Um, yeah, I would just keep going through the Elk Nut app. I recommend everybody get that app. I mean, it's like 10, what is it, 10 or 15 bucks, something like that. And I
Like
think you're
14
a
bucks, I
member for
think.
life. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's awesome.
what's really cool about it is being able to make a call and then listen to the sound that you're trying to make and reference back and forth, because if you
And you
don't
can
sound
record
like the
yourself and
sounds,
listen to it.
yeah, and that helps so much whenever you're trying to learn, learn all those calls that are there to be made. Um,
Yeah, one
I
other
recommend you learn them all, though. Go ahead, Ben.
yeah. No, I was gonna say one other like pro tip on something that I wish I would have known is on that Elk Nut app, you can actually download those videos
Yeah.
so that you don't need
Yeah.
cell service,
Yep.
because I knew what the sequence was that I needed to call, but I could not for the life of me remember what it specifically sounded like. And I did not download those calls. And so nothing sucks worse than when you know what you need to do, but you can't remember how to do it and you really need it. And I found myself in that boat. So I will not make that mistake this year.
And I know this is crazy. So this is the kind of stuff that I used to do whenever I was first learning. I would have my wife, we'd be sitting out on the porch in the evenings, having a couple of drinks or whatever, just chilling out. And I would grab my bugle tube and my reed and my raking stick or whatever, and I would run. We live on 11 acres. I would go out into the middle of the 11 acres and I would bugle back to her and do my scenario out there, and maybe just take 5 minutes to do my scenario, my pants, my huffs, my glunks, my cow sounds, all that stuff. And she would record me from the porch, and then I would come back and listen to myself and make sure that I was okay. Well, that sounded janky there. Maybe I should switch it up back and forth. So I would go somewhere where you can really rip on the calls, and maybe go out and do a WMA somewhere, or wherever, and go really get in on it, practice it. Because the last thing you want to do is you want to get out there and then, oh, am I supposed to rake next, or am I supposed to glunk or whatever? No, make sure you have it kind of nailed down, so that, because what's cool is you're going to start to build this rhythm on how you like to play your scenario out. And as you do that, and then when you are doing that and you get responses from a bull, then that's whenever you can change it or tweak it back and forth. But I would recommend really getting out there and actually doing it and doing the sounds, and really put that practice in that way. It really helps.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And it helps your marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when your wife tells you to look ugly. All right, y'all. Thank you so much, everybody that's watching and listening. Go subscribe to the Flatlander YouTube channel, subscribe to In the Bush, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you can. It helps us out so much. So thanks, you guys.
See you, Cole. See you, Eric.
See ya. Hey, nice to meet you, Ben.